unsustainable and it's morally unacceptable. As all of you here know, there are no good jobs out there for a high school dropout. There are almost no good jobs if you just have a high school diploma. Some form of higher education has to be the goal for every single child. So we have to get much better there. If you look in terms of international benchmarks, international comparisons, these are the main results for 15-year-olds in reading, math, and science. Our country, depending on which subject it was, ranked anywhere from about 14th to 25th. And again, it's not who we think we are as a country, but that's reality. And then finally, a generation ago, not that long ago, we led the world in college graduates. In one generation, we're flatlined. We're stagnated. It's not that we've dropped. We just haven't moved. 9 other countries have passed us by. And so when we're looking at international comparisons on 15-year-olds, international comparisons on college graduates, looking at our devastating high school dropout rates, this is not a time where the status quo is good enough. This is not a time where we can be complacent. And what the President says every single day is that countries that out-educate us are going to out-compete us. And unfortunately, I think as a country, we're paying a price today in our economy for a lack of focus, a lack of quality in our public education. And so we have to get a lot better. The President's drawing a line in the sand. He said by 2020, we have to again lead the world in college graduates. We basically have to have a 50% increase in college graduates. And so all of our work, all of our strategies are towards that goal. To get there, we really think we need a cradle to career continuum. We can't just focus on early childhood or higher ed or K-12. I wish we had that luxury. We don't. So I'm going to walk you through quickly what we're trying to do in all those areas. Close with what I think you guys can do to help move the agenda for the state and for the country. And I'd love to open up for questions and have a real good conversation with this group. Starting with early childhood education, I don't think we need another study to demonstrate the extraordinary benefits of getting our babies off to a good start. Our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds enter kindergarten ready to learn, ready to read, with literacy and socialization skills intact. We think they can do very well. Children come to school who haven't been read to, who might not know the front of the book from the back of the book. I don't know how the best teacher in the world teaches that wide disparity of ability levels coming in. It's very, very difficult. And so we hope to invest significantly in additional new resources in high-quality early childhood programs in disadvantaged communities. And we're serious about that. We're serious about closing those achievement gaps I talked about in the place, not just this state, but states around the country. I think leveling the playing field when children enter kindergarten is a great way to do that. And so we want to put significant new resources with Congress's support behind high-quality early childhood programs in neighborhoods that historically haven't had those. I want to come back to the high-quality point. If this is glorified babysitting, which it is some places, that does not get us where we need to go. If it's really getting those literacy and socialization skills intact for those 5-year-olds entering kindergarten, then we start to change children's life chances. So a huge emphasis there. K-12, as you know, we've tried to drive an extraordinarily strong reform agenda. And I have to say that over the past 2 years, I honestly believe we've seen more reform, more innovation than we have maybe in the past decade. It's a huge amount of change in the right direction. Thanks in part to Race to the Top and the Invest in Innovation Fund and Commons Neighborhoods Initiative, we've tried to change the national dialogue. And I've said repeatedly that as hard as we're pushing everyone else to change, unions and management and boards, we have to change. And I think in many ways our Department of Education has historically been part of the problem. We've been this large, compliance-driven bureaucracy. We haven't driven innovation. We haven't scaled up best practices. We're trying to put unprecedented resources behind those places that are willing to challenge the status quo. And I think because of that, we're seeing this huge outpouring of courage and leadership and innovation at the state, at the district, at the local level. And we have to do everything we can to continue to support that. 40 states, and Minnesota is part of this movement, are now adopting higher standards, college and career-ready standards for every single child. And I can't overemphasize how important that is. Under No Child Left Behind, I don't think this was intentional, but under that law, many states dummied down standards due to political pressure. It made politicians look good, but we were lying to children, we were lying to families. It was bad for them, bad for education, ultimately bad for the state's economy. States are saying no longer, we're going to raise the bar, and for the first time going forward in our country, a child in Massachusetts and a child in Mississippi will be measured by the same yardstick. And all of you here know we're competing for jobs, not locally or in the district or the state or in the country. We're competing for jobs with children in India and China. And we have to give our children a chance to compete on a level playing field. Raising standards is a huge step in the right direction. We've seen 36 states remove impediments to innovative schools, to good charter schools, creativity. We have lots of barriers there. When When I got to Washington, I learned lots of things. I learned, this one stunned me, we had some states that actually had laws in their book. It was prohibited by state legislation to link student achievement and teacher evaluation. All those laws have been eliminated, so it's been a huge breakthrough there. We want to reauthorize the No Child Left Behind law this year. We want to do it in a bipartisan way. We think that law is fundamentally broken in many ways, fundamentally flawed. We walk through a couple of the challenges I see. The law has been very, very punitive, in many ways to fail. Basically, your only reward for success is you're not labeled a failure. Doesn't make any sense to me. It's been very prescriptive, very top-down from Washington. When I ran Chicago public schools, I couldn't micromanage 600 schools. I promise you, I don't want to. We can't micromanage 95,000 schools in Washington. We have to get Washington out of the way and let great local teachers, great local principals and boards do the good work, hold them accountable, hold them to a high bar, but let them do what they need to do. I always tell the story that I almost had to sue the Department of Education for the right to tutor my children after school. It made no sense. I got in this huge pitched battle. We won, but why did I have to fight Washington to tutor poor children after school who wanted to work hard, who wanted to improve? It made no sense whatsoever. The law's been very, it's led to a narrowing of the curriculum. It's probably the biggest complaint I've heard around the country. Yes, reading and math are important, but we have to think about all the other subjects. And as I talked about, to a dumbing down of standards. So how do we fix all those things going forward? We have to reward excellence. Great schools, great teachers, great districts, great states. We need to learn from them. We need to recognize it. We need to share best practice. We need to put more resources behind there. In education, for some reason, we've been scared to talk about excellence. And all of your businesses, you focus on excellence every single day. You talk about it, you try and learn from each other. Somehow that hasn't happened enough, and we have to change that culture. We have to provide a lot more flexibility, trying to get Washington out of the way. And again, really empower great local educators to step up, make a difference in students' lives. They know much better what's right for their children and community than we can begin to know from Washington. We have to give them the room and the space to be creative and move. As I said, we've seen 40 states raise standards, raise the bar, huge amount of movement. We want to see that continue. And then finally, we want to invest $1 billion behind what we call a well-rounded education. So yes, reading and math are fundamental, they're foundational, but science, social studies, art, dance, drama, music, financial literacy, environmental literacy, physical education, all of our children deserve a world-class, well-rounded education. Somehow we've lost the way from that. Somehow we've walked away from that, and we want to put $1 billion behind places that, again, are willing to challenge the status quo. The final thing I'm saying that is I'm not just talking about the high school level, but first and second and third graders. The high school level is a little bit late. We'll have to give our babies a chance to develop their sense of self-esteem, figure out what they like, what they want to engage in. So it has to be all the way up, not just starting when you're 14 or 15. So if we do better on the early childhood side, we continue to drive real reform K-12, the goal is obviously to dramatically increase the number of students not just graduating from high school, but prepared to be successful in the world of higher education. And again, our ultimate goal is to again lead the world of college graduates a decade from now to hit the president's mark. A number of breakthroughs we've tried to make on the higher education side. First of all, just simplifying the financial aid form. Those of you as parents who have done that, you almost had to have a PhD to figure it out. The form itself was a real barrier to going to college, which made no sense. We've partnered with the IRS, which I had a lot of trepidation about, but they've been a fantastic partner. And that form is much, much simpler today than it was 2 years ago. And if you think about first-generation families trying to have their children go to college, English language learners, it was crazy to me that the form itself stopped people from pursuing that dream. And we've done a lot to simplify that, and we'll continue to move in that direction. We put, without going back to taxpayers for another dime, simply by stopping subsidizing banks and putting the money into students, we've increased Pell Grants by $40 billion over the next decade. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. We're hard-working families. Hard-working families trying to get their children to college. As all of you know, college has never been more expensive. It's never been more important to go. Our nation's families are really struggling now financially, so having a chance to put huge resources there has been huge. On top of that, just recently with the tax cut bill that passed, you may not know, was the extension of the American Opportunity Tax Credit, which is $2,500 a year for middle-class families sending their children to college. So 10 grand over 4 years of college. And just trying to find ways to increase access. I think a real unrecognized, unpolished gem along the education continuum are our nation's community colleges. We think whether it's 18-year-olds or 28-year-olds or 58-year-olds who are going back to retrain and retool healthcare jobs and green energy jobs and technology jobs, we think it's supposed to go back to community colleges to get those new skills. Our country's going to get back on its feet. And yesterday we were really proud to announce with the Department of Labor a $2 billion investment in our nation's community colleges. It sounds like a race to the top for those two-year institutions, whether they're traditional, public, private, for-profit, doesn't matter. Those places that are willing to partner with the business community, provide real career tracks, real job opportunities for folks going back to school. We want to make the biggest investment in community colleges since the GI Bill, so a huge movement in the right direction there. So we think we have a chance to fundamentally break through in all of these areas, but we can't do it alone. I just want to close with what I think the business community can do to partner with us and help to push this strong agenda. Having you guys invest, I know so many of you are, invest in high-need, high-impact projects and really have a way to use your resources, both your financial resources, your human resources, to get into schools and make a difference. You can do stuff individually in your local community. There are now national groups, Change the Equation, working on STEM fields, Skills for America, working on career readiness, whether it's working individually in small groups or as part of national coalitions. The business community's voice in education, active participation, is desperately needed. Secondly, being very, very focused in your philanthropic giving and staying the course. And I'm going to meet with the CEO of Target later today. I think Target's just been this absolute national leader. And laser-like focus on early literacy. We know if we get our babies reading early, lots of good things are going to happen. If we don't do that well, frankly, not much else we do matters. What I worry about sometimes with philanthropic giving is people do something for a year or two, and then they move on to the next thing, and they move on to the next thing, and they'll sustain the effort. So whether it's early literacy, whether it's early childhood education, whether it's after-school programming, whether it's school reform, whatever it might be, having you guys invest and stay the course and stay with it year after year after year. This stuff takes time. But having that long-term commitment is hugely important. I know when I ran the Chicago Public Schools, having an active business and philanthropic community helping me drive my strategy made a huge difference in the lives of our students. And again, it's just tremendous financial and human capital resources available here. And then finally, having your voice at the local and the state level around policy issues. The fact that the state hasn't been more open around alternative certification for teachers doesn't make sense to me. I think what we want is just more great teachers in our nation's classrooms, wherever they come from. And we should hold everyone accountable. We should hold them to a high bar for being really creative there. The governor's working very, very hard to invest more money in education. We have to invest more, but we have to invest in reform, not in the status quo. And having the business community be that presence, be that voice, again, at the local level and at the state level. The action's always going to be there. Our funds at the federal level are 8, 9, 10% of any district's budget. The vast majority of money comes at the local and state level. The vast majority of policy implementation comes at the local and state level. The business community, I don't think, has been an active enough voice, active enough participant in these debates, and have you step up together to have Minnesota with a goal, Minnesota leading the country in education reform. I just think the dividends for your children, for your community are huge. I'll just close with why I think this issue is so important. I think we're fighting for our nation's economic security. As all of you know, in a globally competitive, knowledge-based economy, those with low skills are going to lose. Those communities with low skills are going to lose. Those communities with high skills, those communities with a really educated workforce are going to be successful. You have to push very, very hard to make sure your community and the state as a whole is a winner as we move forward there. This is also about national security. It's really interesting. I've done a couple of press conferences with some of our nation's generals and admirals. Very few of our students today are actually able to enter the military. They're undereducated, they have criminal records, they're obese. It's not just about economic security, it's also about national security. And then finally, I've said repeatedly that I really think this is the civil rights issue of our generation. I think the dividing line today is much more around educational opportunity than around race or class. You give me the poorest child from the toughest community with a tough family, put that child in a great early childhood program, in an elementary school with high expectations, in a middle school where they can take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, in a high school where there's a college-going culture. And I'm actually very, very optimistic about that child's chances going forward. When you put that child in a mediocre school with low expectations where children aren't moving, we're basically perpetuating poverty and social failure. So all of us have to move, all of us have to move outside our comfort zones. But I think the business community will be an absolutely vital voice in this debate. I thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thanks so much.